Hello, and welcome to the weapon analysis and tier list for Rundown 5. Before we get started, I got a few things I need to say. For one, this is still an analysis video. I'm going to go over a lot of stats, pretty much anything relevant to any of the weapons, so damage, ranges, ammo efficiency, shots to kill, shots to stagger, etc. You know, it's going to be a lot, so if you don't really care about numbers too much, skip to this timestamp and you just see the finalized tier list. Outside of that, yeah, there's a lot of numbers. I'm going to try and go as in-depth as possible and try to speak, I guess, as objectively as I can. But again, it is still a tier list. It is still my opinions. I'm trying to be as fair as I can, though. Number 2, weapons are going to be ranked against each other based off of how well they perform compared to all of the other options that you could have picked. So if a weapon places lower, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. It just means it's not as good as other things that you could have taken. And as part of that, it is also going to be ranked off of how useful that weapon is for the rundown in its entirety. So, for example, if a weapon doesn't perform well on most of the levels in the game, it's going to rank lower. Even if the weapon itself isn't necessarily bad, if it's not worth taking over something else, it's going to rank lower. Finally, weapons are going to be compared against one another quite frequently, especially when I'm talking about the stats of each weapon, and especially if these weapons that I'm comparing fall into these same categories. So for instance, machine pistol and SMG are very, very similar, Hel Gun and Hel Rifle are very, very similar, things like that. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to start with primaries first, and we're going to be ranking everything in order of how they show up on the selection menu in game. And first up is the pistol. The pistol is going to be in S tier, and while it may seem dumb to try and start the tier list with an S weapon, it's actually very good, because this is a very, very strong baseline to try and compare the other weapons against. So let's go ahead and get started by talking about the stats of this thing. The pistol is 4.39 damage, and for those of you who don't know, strikers in this game have 20 HP. And when you're talking about weapon damage, strikers are pretty much just the benchmark enemy. Shooters are an outlier because they take less shots to kill, and most of the things you're going to be shooting enemies are just normal strikers, so we're going to use that as the baseline. But yeah, just 4.39 damage, strikers have 20 HP, pistol can 5-shot kill them. Another benchmark is the hammer. The hammer does exactly 4 damage when it's not charged, so the pistol is pretty much the same damage as the hammer is. For ammo efficiency, the pistol, when you have 100% ammo, gets a total of 56 kills if you shoot perfectly. And then it also gets 10 kills per ammo refill that you get, which is, it has the highest ammo efficiency per full refill out of any weapon in the game, and it is tied for the highest for kills per refill with the heavy SMG. The pistol gets 5 kills per magazine, which is just completely average across the board for almost every weapon in the game. You're going to be seeing 5 per magazine a lot. The 2 highest belong to the double tap rifle and the DMR, with 7 and 6 kills per magazine respectively. The pistol also gets 15 staggers per magazine, and while it may sound weird to include staggers per mag, stagger in this game is very, very important, and that's why I firmly believe there is no support role in this game, because everybody on the team should be staggering enemies. The 2 things you need in a primary weapon are damage and the ability to stagger. Because when you're doing alarm scans, you don't necessarily need to kill the enemy, you just need them to not hit you until you can get out of the scan and actually move around the room. So I'm going to be including staggers per magazine in here just because it's actually a pretty important piece of information to have. In the case of the pistol, it has 15 because the pistol staggers on every bullet. Because another really unique thing about the pistol is that it is the only primary weapon in the game, with the exception of the sawed-off, but we'll get into that later, that has a more than 1.0 stagger multiplier. And if you don't know what that means, in addition to damage, enemies also have, or in addition to HP, enemies also have a quote-unquote stagger HP. So once they take a certain amount of damage, they are forced to stagger, which is, just stun. The stagger HP is kept separately from their actual HP, and because the pistol is a more than 1.0, it has a 1.5, you're effectively doing 6.5, somewhere like that damage, to their stagger HP, which causes them to stagger on every single bullet, and it actually allows you to stagger chargers on every shot, which is something most primaries cannot do. I know that was very, very long-winded. I'm only going to cover this that one time, so you don't need to worry about it. But again, just to recap, the pistol gets 15 staggers per magazine, and it is the only weapon that has more than a 1.0 stagger multiplier. The pistol is tied with the SMG for the second fastest reload speed in the game, being at 1.5 seconds. The machine pistol is the only thing that reloads faster, and it reloads in 1.25 seconds. So the reload speed on this thing is actually very, very fast. The pistol has 8 meter range, which doesn't sound like a lot, but excluding the DMR and double tap because their range is fucking insane, the actual average range across all the primary weapons this rundown is 8.1 meters roughly. So yeah, the pistol actually has pretty average range. The reason we're excluding the DMR and the double tap is because the DMR has 50 meters range before damage fall off, and the double tap has 40. You're not going to be shooting anything that's outside those two distances, so those things effectively have infinite range. And they're just crazy outliers, so I'm excluding them from the actual average for all the other weapons. If we include them, the average goes up to somewhere around 15.3, which makes all of the weapons look terrible range-wise. Just to recap, here are all the stats for the pistol. Compared to all the other primary weapons, this thing is very, very strong. In many cases, just flat out better than other primary weapons in most scenarios. I'm going to close off with some notes about it. Because it is a single-shot weapon, it is actually very easy to hit most of the shots that you need compared to the fully automatic ones where you're, guaranteed to miss a few. The hip fire on it is some of the best in the game. The hip fire deviation is 1.0, which I don't really know what that means for the most part, I'm going to be honest, but I know that the other weapons are not that good. That's really all I care. It can one-shot stagger charges, which is very, very good. The fact that it staggers in every shot makes it very, very easy to follow up for additional headshots. You only need to hit one head out of 3 shots required to kill the enemy, which is very good. The range is average, which is amazing, and its holding potential is absolutely phenomenal. The one-shot headshot makes the staggers very, very potent, and the fast reload allows you to continuously stagger enemies. And then, yeah, the kill threat for it is just very, very high across the board. It has very good kill times. It's very efficient at what it does. And finally, I'm going to close off each weapon by having a clip showing its holding potential against a horde of enemies. And in case you weren't convinced that the pistol is completely overpowered, this clip probably should. Yeah, this thing is really, really good. It's pretty much probably the best primary weapon in the game right now. You will never go wrong taking pistol. It is very, very good. So, moving on from the pistol, we're going to go to the machine pistol, which unfortunately is very, very bad. Here are the stats relevant to that. The machine pistol does 1.38 damage per shot, which is nothing spectacular. It takes 10 shots to kill an enemy, 3 headshots, and 7 body shots, and if you don't hit any headshots, it takes 15 bullets to kill 1 striker. Its ammo efficiency isn't actually the worst, it just takes a lot of bullets to kill stuff, but it does get a lot of bullets, so it kind of balances out in some way. It gets 46.8 kills per full ammo, and it gets 8.2 kills per refill. Much like the pistol and most of the other weapons, it gets 5 kills per magazine, so pretty average across the board. For staggers per magazine, it gets 25 staggers per magazine if everything is a headshot. It gets 16.6 if only one of your shots hits a head, the rest of the body, and you get 12.5 per magazine if all of your shots hit the body. It has a reload speed of 1.25 seconds, which is the fastest in the game, although not by much. And then it has a 4 meter range, which is absolutely horrendous. It is the worst range out of any weapon in the game. And if you don't trust me, here is a clip. This, where I am standing right here, I have damage fall off, and I cannot kill the enemy in 10 shots because I have damage fall off. It is terrible, man. To recap, here are all the stats relevant to the machine pistol. Overall, this thing is not good. It basically just feels like a worse SMG in every single way. The only thing that it is better than the SMG at is its slightly faster reload, and if you hit all body shots for staggers, it gets more staggers by 2.5, which isn't good. So here's some notes about the weapon. It has some of the worst recoil in the entire game, so hitting all shots is basically impossible. It has bad hipfire. It has a hipfire deviation of 2.5, which is, you know, somewhat average for some weapons, but it's still not great. The range is absolutely horrendous on this thing, and your staggers and your kills per magazine are going to drop significantly because even if you're like point blank at the enemy, you still have damage fall off. On paper, it sounds good, but its holding potential just really isn't great because of the recoil, because of the damage fall off. You're missing a lot of your shots anyways, so most of your staggers are just going to drop significantly. It essentially has no kill threat. It takes a lot of precision with this thing to even be good. Not even be good, just be viable, and it's just not good. It really isn't. And finally, it's an automatic weapon, so hitting perfect ammo efficiency is never going to happen. It won't happen for any gun, honestly, but it's going to be much, much harder for automatic weapons compared to the single-fire ones. So yeah, here's a clip of its holding potential. Yeah, most of your shots are going to miss just because of how damn inaccurate the thing is. So even though it does fire a lot, most of your shots aren't going to hit anyways, and the ones that do aren't going to have any weight behind them because you need to hit a lot of shots if you want to actually stagger anything. So yeah, it goes into D tier. It's just worse than the SMG, like in pretty much every single conceivable metric. Talking about the SMG, it's time to move on to that. So the SMG is going into C tier, and here are the stats relevant to it. So the SMG does 1.45 damage per shot. It takes 8 bullets to kill, with 3 of them being headshots and 5 of them being body shots, or if you hit only bodies, it takes 14 shots to kill. It gets 49.125 kills per full refill, and it gets 5 kills per magazine, much like most of the other weapons. It's actually pretty good for ammo efficiency, and this thing has effectively no recoil. It's legitimately just a laser beam, so it's actually really, really easy to hit a lot of your shots. Stagger on this thing is actually very, very good. It gets 20 staggers per magazine if you hit all heads. It gets 20 staggers if you hit only one head and the rest are bodies, and it gets 10 staggers per magazine if all the shots are body shots. This is actually pretty good. It's pretty good. It has a 1.5 second reload speed, which is tied for the second lowest along with the pistol, which isn't too much slower than the machine pistol anyways, so it's not too big of a deal. Its range is 5 meters, so again, it has the same problem the machine pistol has, where most of your kills and staggers are going to drop significantly just because of how bad the damage is. Sorry, not damage, how bad the damage fall off is, because it only has 5 meters. Some closing notes on it. Because of its practically non-existent recoil, this thing literally is a laser beam. It just fires in a straight line, and that is it. Because of its low recoil, hitting a lot of your shots is actually pretty easy. And it has a very, very good stagger because it only requires 1 of your 2 shots to hit the head. 1 head, 1 body will stagger an enemy, so it's actually very, very easy to get your staggers. It's an SMG, so it does fire very, very quickly, so it's actually very easy to get many, many staggers back to back. Its hipfire is pretty bad. Again, it's at 2.5 hipfire deviation, which I guess is average for most weapons, but it's still not good. The range, it has the same problem that the machine pistol does. The range is horrendous. So you're going to be missing a lot of your potential kills and staggers per magazine simply just because of how damage fall off works. The flashlight is also terrible. It has an 8-meter flashlight, which is the same as like the shotgun and the revolver. It's the only primary that has a terrible flashlight, so I don't know why. It's just a weird thing that it has. Its poor range and damage does make its kill threat pretty low, so it's pretty much just a stagger machine. That's pretty much all you're going to use it for. And because it is an automatic weapon, its ammo efficiency is going to suffer just because it's harder to hit all the shots on that relative to single-shot weapons. So here's a clip of its holding potential. The stagger on this thing isn't bad, but the assault rifle can put out stagger pretty much just as efficiently from a much greater range. So while this thing does have very good stagger, and it's a lot better than the assault rifle is at close quarters when it comes to stagger, most of the time you're just not going to need it, so that's why this is ranking kind of lower. That's not saying that the stagger is bad. The stagger on it is still good, but a lot of the time you're not going to need the amount of stagger it does, and not having the range or the damage of other weapons is what really hinders this thing. During surge alarms, it's probably one of the better primaries, but there's only 5 surge alarms this entire rundown, and 3 of them are on E1. So, 13 levels, 11 of them you don't need the SMG for. It's not that great. So next up we have the heavy SMG, and here are the stats related to that. It does 2 damage, and it kills in 6 shots, so it's 3 to the body and 3 to the head, or 10 to the body to get a kill. It is the second highest ammo efficient primary in the game. It gets 55.16 kills per full ammo, and it gets 10 kills per refill, just like the pistol does. So it is actually rivals the pistol in terms of ammo efficiency, which is actually very, very good. It's a little bit lower than the other ones though. It gets 4 kills per magazine instead of 5, so it's slightly below average on that. And its staggers are below average for the most part. It gets 12.5 staggers if you hit all headshots. It also gets 12.5 if you hit one to the head and 1 to the body, and it gets 8.3 if it's all bodies. So its stagger potential isn't as good as some other primaries, but still not necessarily bad. It has a 1.55 second reload, so it's basically the same as the SMG and the pistol in terms of reload speed. And then it has a 6 meter range, so it does have more damage and range than the SMG does. Not quite as much as the pistol, and still not as much as the assault rifle. So here's some notes about the weapon. Here's some closing notes. Again, it is effectively a laser beam. Much like the SMG, this thing has practically no recoil at all. You just shoot in a straight line. Because of this, it is very, very easy to hit most of your shots, and getting 1 headshot for good stagger is actually really easy to do. Its hipfire is okay. It has a 2.0 hipfire deviation. Not as good as the pistol, but still better than most of the other primaries. The range is okay, even though it's 6 meters. Your staggers and kills are still going to be affected, but not as much as some of the other weapons are. And its holding potential is actually, okay for what it is. So here's a clip of its holding potential. Its holding potential is okay. That's kind of why it's sitting in B tier. I think if it had better holding potential, it would actually be a really good contender for A tier. But as it stands now, the 5 bullets that are missing from its magazine actually hurt it a little bit. And even though it does have better range than the SMG, it still is only 6 meters, so your kills and staggers are still going to be affected by it. And its kills just feel kind of slow compared to the assault rifle. Outside of that, its ammo efficiency is really the main thing, is keeping in B tier. If it had better stagger, it could go A. Moving on from the heavy SMG, we have the DMR. This thing is also going into the S tier. DMR is really good, actually, for what it does. It's probably the closest thing, quote unquote, to a support weapon I would say this game has, even though I don't really think this game has a support role. For stats, the DMR does 7.5 damage, which is very, very high for primaries. It gets 47.5 kills per full ammo, and it gets 8 kills per refill, so it's not the most ammo efficient thing on its own, but it's not bad. It gets 6 kills per mag, which is slightly above average, and it can get 12 staggers per mag because it deals enough damage to stagger on every single bullet, which is actually pretty good. Although the stagger itself isn't anything phenomenal, being able to stagger on 1 bullet is always a great thing. It has somewhat slower reload. Some of the other weapons has a 2.3 second reload, but its range is 50 meters. I literally can't think of a single instance where you're going to be shooting anything in this game outside of 50 meters, so this thing pretty much effectively has unlimited range, and the double tap is very similar. The double tap is 40 meters. It effectively has infinite range. Some closing notes for this weapon is that it's very low recoil while you're aiming down sights, makes chaining headshots with it. Very, very easy to do. It is a single shot weapon, so hitting most of your shots consecutively is going to be easier than it is with fully automatic weapons. Another really, really good thing about the DMR, probably one of the main things that makes it an S tier, is if you hit an enemy in the head, they are a one shot from any weapon in the game. If you blow their head up with the DMR, they are left on such low HP that literally anything can kill them. Any bullet. Another really good thing about the DMR is that it can one-shot shooters. Well, this may sound like not as good as a point for other people. When you're sitting in a scan and you're trying to shoot a bunch of strikers that are in front of you and you keep getting aim punched by shooters, or you're just getting picked off health-wise by shooters, one tapping of the DMR is a fucking godsend. It really is. Again, I said earlier, but its range is practically and just effectively infinite for all intents and purposes. Much like the pistol, it can one-shot stagger chargers, which is also very good, something most primaries cannot do. Its hipfire is kind of meh. Not really meh. It's bad. It's 2.5 hipfire deviation, which most weapons have, but it's not good. And it is a very, very high kill threat. It takes 2 shots to kill stuff, or you can, because of its fact that it leaves enemies in such low HP after the first shot, it enables this kind of quote-unquote fire and forget playstyle where you can just shoot an enemy once in the head and leave it for your team. Pretty much any weapon will kill it. Despite the fact that this thing only gets 12 staggers per magazine, it's actually really, really good with its holding potential because it has the same thing that the pistol does where you can blow up heads in one shot and it leaves enemies on very low HP. So killing them on any follow-up stagger is actually very, very likely. So here's a clip of its holding potential. Yeah, this is another weapon I don't really feel like you can go wrong with. Maybe having more than 2 of them on your team might cause problems when it comes to ammo efficiency if people keep missing, but for the most part, it's still a very, very strong weapon. Its fire and forget playstyle is absolutely phenomenal. It really helps the rest of your team, in all honesty. You don't have to funnel as much ammo into the DMR player either. And it has really good stagger. It has good holding potential, infinite range. It's a really, really solid weapon. Next up, we have the double tap rifle. This thing is going into B tier. It could have been a strong contender for A, except for a few key reasons, which I'll discuss. So let's get into its stats. The double tap deals 5.5 damage per shot, and it fires a burst of 2. So every time you left click, you're effectively doing 11 damage. Because of that, it has a 2-shot kill, 1 burst kill, pretty much. 1 to the head, 1 to the body kills, or 4 shots to the body will kill. It is a very ammo efficient weapon on paper. Executing this is very, very difficult to do. Technically, it is more ammo efficient than the heavy SMG, being at 55.5 kills per full ammo and 9.5 kills per refill, which is still very, very good. It also has the highest kills per magazine out of any primary weapon, being at 7, and it gets effectively 7 staggers per magazine. I know you can burst cancel with this thing, and I know that you can, try and flick your mouse to hit multiple enemies in one burst. But mouse flicking is really inconsistent, so I'm not going to include that, and burst canceling is an exploit, so I'm not going to count that towards this weapon's overall strength. It is somewhat on the slower side for reloads, being at 2.15 seconds, and much like the DMR, it does have effectively infinite range. It has a range of 40 meters. I cannot think of a single scenario where you are going to be shooting outside of 40 meters anyways, so this thing effectively has unlimited range. Some closing notes for it. It can one-burst normal enemies, which gives it one of the fastest kill times for all primaries in the game. Some interesting thing is that its recoil is kind of awkward. The first bullet breaks the head, which causes the second one to miss a lot of the time, so you have to kind of aim down towards their chest after the first bullet hits. And if enemies are strafing, this can be harder to do, and if you miss a single shot, it requires another full burst in order to kill your target, which is going to waste your ammo efficiency. It has some of the worst hipfire out of all weapons in the game, or out of all primaries in the game, being a hipfire deviation of 3.5. But it actually does have a pretty good holding potential. So here is a clip of its holding potential. By no means is this thing bad, and it probably could go into A tier, but I'm leaving it in B just because you really have to work to get this thing to be as good as some of the other primaries. And it is a much, much more punishing weapon than any of the others if you miss even a single shot from your burst. So just because it's a lot harder to make the most out of it, it is going to go into B tier, but it, in all honesty, probably could be an A. Next up, we have the Assault Rifle. The Assault Rifle is also going to go into the B tier. Here are the stats for it. It deals 2.18 damage per shot, and it requires 7 bullets to kill enemies, 2 to the head and 5 to the body, or just 10 shots to the body will kill an enemy. It has 45.28 kills per full ammo and 8 kills per refill, so it's actually on the lower side for ammo efficiency compared to other primary weapons. Like I said earlier, at least when it comes to efficiency, the heavy SMG just feels like a better assault rifle, and in most cases it is in most aspects except for just range. But yeah, a lot of the time it just feels like a better assault rifle. When it comes to stagger, this is where the assault rifle shines, and this is probably one of the only reasons why it's in B tier instead of C, is it gets 30 staggers per mag. It is very, very good. If you hit one shot to the head, it is a stagger. Just gets 30 staggers per mag, or it gets 10 if you hit all body shots. But yeah, having a potential of every bullet staggering is very, very strong. This is one of the reasons why the assault rifle is actually pretty good. It has a 1.8 second reload time, which is not slow at all, and has a 10 meter range, which means a lot of your shots are going to be dealing full damage, and you won't have to deal with damage fall off for the most part. It does have some moderate recoil. Most of the time it won't cause your shots to miss, but there are still going to be many scenarios where you are going to miss because of it. This is one of the other reasons why the heavy SMG just feels like a better assault rifle. The other thing about the assault rifle is that hitting most shots is still relatively easy. It's not as easy as the SMG, but it is still very good. The range on it is pretty solid. 10 meters, you're not going to deal with damage fall off for the most part. It has really, really good holding potential, actually. Having a one-shot stagger and a decently fast reload speed makes it pretty nice to hold with. It has pretty okay kill threat. The only issue with it is that its ammo efficiency is among some of the lowest, and it is an automatic weapon, so you're not going to be hitting as many shots as you would with some of the single-fire options. So here's a clip of its holding potential. So yeah, this thing does have actually very, very good holding potential. The only reason it's in B tier is because it is among some of the lowest when it comes to ammo efficiency out of all of the weapons. If you're playing a level that has a lot more ammo, something like D2 maybe, this thing can be A tier easily. It's just currently, it really is only B just because its ammo efficiency is very, very low. Moving on to the Burst Rifle. The Burst Rifle is going to go into C tier, and there are many reasons why. Overall, this thing is just strikingly below average for stats. It deals 2.2 damage per shot and it kills in 2 bursts. So it hits 3 to the head and 3 to the body will kill, and also 10 to the body will kill. It's only fractionally better than the assault rifle when it comes to ammo efficiency. It gets 45.3 kills per full ammo, and it gets 8 kills per refill. It gets 5 kills per magazine, which is, kind of standard. It gets 10 staggers per mag, which is terrible. The heavy SMG is also kind of bad in that department, but even this one gets even worse than the heavy SMG. And I know you can burst cancel and hit multiple enemies in one burst, but burst cancel is an exploit, so it will not count that towards the weapon's overall strength, and consistently hitting multiple enemies in one burst is never going to happen, so I'm not going to include that either. It has a 2-second reload, which is a bit on the slower side, but still for the most part pretty average. One of the only benefits of this weapon is that it has a 20-meter range, which pretty much means that most of the time, with very, very few exceptions, you are not going to be having any damage fall off for the things you're shooting, which is really nice. Some closing notes for this weapon. It is effectively a laser. There is pretty much no recoil involved with this thing at all. And for whatever reason, it has the same flashlight that the Hel Rifle and the Sniper Rifle do, which is a 20-meter flashlight. It has the same problem that the double tap rifle does, where it's as if you missed one shot of the burst, you're going to have to fire another full burst, which is going to waste ammo. And you have to hit exactly 3 shots to the head and exactly 3 to the body in order to kill in 2 bursts. And that's not consistent. And unlike the double tap where it's just difficult, and the burst rifle, it just isn't going to happen. It's just not consistent flat out. It also has bad hip fire. It has a 2.5 hip fire deviation, which again most weapons have, but it's not good. Its ammo efficiency is crazy low. If you don't hit any heads, you have to kill in 4 bursts, which is not good at all. And its holding potential is actually pretty bad, because you have to wait a full burst in order to actually fire again, and you don't really get many staggers per mag anyways. So it just doesn't really have good holding potential. But anyways, here's a clip of its holding potential. Yeah, this thing isn't very good. There's very little keeping it out of D tier. I think one of the main things keeping it out of D tier is the fact that it has a 20-meter range, which is really high. And the fact that if you do land your shots, it has a very, very fast kill time. But yeah, outside of that, there's not much keeping this thing out of D tier. The peripherals are nice. Having the bonus range and the flashlight are nice, but they're not carrying the weapon by any means. But yeah, this thing just isn't great, so C tier it goes. And lastly, for primary weapons, we have the sawed-off shotgun. This thing is going straight into the F tier. It is just terrible across the board. F tier is reserved for weapons I can never see anybody using reasonably ever. This weapon fits the bill perfectly. It is terrible. I can never see a single scenario where I would ever want to use this thing. So yeah, let's get started talking about its stats. It does 2.95 damage and has 8 pellets, so it does a total of 23.6 damage if you hit all the pellets. It has 41 kills per full refill, which is the worst ammo efficiency out of all primaries. It gets 7.5 kills per refill, which again is the worst ammo efficiency out of all primaries. You get a maximum of 3 kills per mag, and it has 3 staggers per mag, which is absolutely horrendous. It has a 1.9 second reload, and fun fact, this is the only primary weapon that you can't reload cancel, because why not? And it has a 4-meter range. All of this combined pretty much just makes it so the slow reload, the poor range, and its terrible mag size pretty much make it good for only killing trickles during air alarms. But most of the time your hammer can clear that faster anyways. Its poor range also makes its one-shot potential very, very inconsistent, and its holding potential is completely non-existent. After the first 3 shots, if you're getting swarmed, you just flat out die. There's nothing you can do about it. And most of the time, having 3 people on your team staggering instead of 4 isn't enough to hold an alarm scan, so don't ever bring it for that. Another thing is that it requires you to get close to people, so you're very, very likely to take damage, and because of its poor range, you're not likely to kill them in the first shot anyways. So you're not likely to actually get 3 kills per mag, making its ammo efficiency even worse than it already is. The only good thing I have to say about this is that it has a hipfire deviation of 0, which means that it is 100% accurate in hipfire compared to ADS, but it's a shotgun, so that's kind of redundant within itself, and that it actually has decently high kill threat against giants, but again, you actually do have to get pretty close to them, which most of the time you don't want to do. Anyways, here is a clip of its holding potential. Yeah, this thing's holding potential is really bad. It's the only clip that I use doors on, because if I didn't use doors, I literally would have just died instantly. You have no chance. Once you fire your first 3 shots, you're just kind of screwed if there's more than 3 things, because you have to reload. The other thing is that this thing lacks both things that you want from a primary weapon, which is stagger potential and consistent damage. This does not have consistent damage, and it sure as hell does not have any stagger potential whatsoever. Which is kind of ironic because it has a 2.0 stagger multiplier, which is honestly redundant, because if you're using this thing to stagger, you're doing very, very many things wrong in this game. But all of that aside, that is it for the primary weapons, so we're going to go ahead and get started at looking at some of the special weapons. And the ranking on this is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be more centric on what does the special weapon do, what is it most effective at, and pretty much how relevant is that for most of the rundown. Because unlike the primaries, most specials don't fall into one specific role, so I'm going to try and rank them based off of how good they are at doing what they're designed to do. So let's go ahead and get started. First up, we have the shotgun. The shotgun is pretty much just your general purpose weapon. It's going into the A tier because it is actually just a very good, or like all-around jack of all trades weapon. For stats, it deals 3.01 damage and has 10 pellets, so it effectively deals 30 damage. It has a 3-second reload, and it has a 4-meter range. 4 meters kind of sucks, but it is a shotgun, so all the shotguns have 4-meter ranges. Thankfully, this shotgun, because it has this the normal shotgun, I guess the Buckland, because it has good damage and a large number of pellets, you can actually snipe people from very far away with this thing. And it can one-shot normal strikers pretty well outside of its 4-meter range. Another good thing is that it can one-shot chargers if you're in 4 meters, and it can 4-shot giants if you're within 4 meters. And if you're outside of it, it'll still deal a good amount of damage, so they'll probably die within 2 or 3 shots of your primary, depending on what you're using. So it's very good for that as well. Another thing is that this thing can actually rival the sniper rifle when it comes to boss damage. Even though the sniper can one-shot tumors on bosses, the shotgun can one-shot the tumor on the normal mom, and if you freeze the normal mom, you can solo kill her with only a shotgun before she gets unfrozen. The other thing is that the fastest way to kill the big mother is to have 2 shotguns, because you can kill her in under 5 seconds before she gets unfrozen from a trip mine. So the 2 shotguns is really, really good for that as well. It's probably worse at killing tank than sniper is, but definitely shotgun can rival sniper rifle when it comes to boss damage. It's actually really, really good with boss damage. The thing also has a good hip fire. A lot of the time you don't want to ADS with a shotgun because it just feels pointless, and you just want to shoot stuff. It has a 1.0 hip fire deviation, which is the same as the pistol, which is actually really good. And if you need to ADS, it removes all the hip fire deviation, much like all the other guns in the game. So yeah, it's actually not that bad. But anyways, overall, it fills many different purposes: boss damage, killing big guys, killing medium trickles, etc. And it does all of them actually fare very, very well. So solid A tier. I think if it had more ammo, it might actually get pushed up into S. This thing is pretty good. Next up, we have the combat shotgun. So the combat shotgun is going into the C tier, mostly because there's just not many opportunities to really use it this rundown, and the ones that you would use it, it's not really the best at either. So let's go over its stats. It deals 2.51 damage and has 6 pellets, so effectively 15 damage. It has a 2.83 second reload speed, and it has a range of 4 meters, much like all the other shotguns. The weird problem with the combat shotgun is that it has a very, very weird niche to it. It has a 2.0 stagger multiplier, and although you can one-shot normal strikers with this thing, because of its poor range and its low pellet count, it's actually very inconsistent to one-shot normal strikers, so it tends to just stagger them. So it makes up for that by having a 2.0 stagger value, which is actually pretty nice because it means that only one pellet needs to hit your enemy in order to stagger them. And if you are within 8 meters instead of 4, you need to hit 2 pellets instead of 6. So yeah, it's actually pretty nice in that regard, but when it comes to killing normal stuff, it doesn't really do too well. It has a pretty long reload speed, so it can't really make up for this with its low mag size either, because although it can stagger, it's not fantastic at it. It's more of like a supplementary, we need stagger now kind of situation if your primary isn't cutting it and they're close to you. The other thing is that it does actually output damage very, very quickly, so you can melt big enemies with it. It's just not particularly ammo efficient, so unless you're playing a level that has a lot of ammo, you normally don't want to just mag dump into large enemies, because it will take a minimum of 8 shots to kill the giant, and it will take 10 shots to kill hybrids or big shooters. So, all in all, just to recap, it's very interesting stagger mechanics paired with its poor range, pellet count, and inconsistent ability to one-shot strikers makes it a very, very weird stagger-ish weapon on a shotgun, which doesn't really make any sense. Outside of that, it has okay hipfire. It has a 2.0 hipfire deviation, which is slightly above average, and its boss damage is just average across the board, same as the Hel Gun. So yeah, overall this weapon is just underutilized because it's very, very interesting niche, so it gets a C tier. Next up we have the Revolver. The Revolver is also going to go into the C tier. In almost all cases, it is just an inferior Hel Gun. So let's talk about its stats. It has 12.21 damage, it has a 2-second reload speed, and it has a range of 12 meters. Some notes about it is that it is actually very ammo efficient when it comes to killing small enemies because it has a good ammo count, it gets a large amount of bullets per refill, and it can one-shot normal enemies even from outside of its 12-meter range. Its hipfire is okay. It has a 2.0 hipfire, which is slightly above average. Some of this thing's biggest downfalls, though, is that it is not good against big enemies, and it is among the worst out of the special weapons when it comes to killing bosses. We'll go over it again when we get to the Hel Gun section, but essentially, the Hel Gun is just better than Revolver in all ways, except for its slightly lower ammo count, and the fact that the Revolver has a faster reload speed. But outside of that, the Revolver is just flat out worse, which is why it's getting a C tier. Another reason why this thing is getting a C tier is that for most levels this rundown, the only levels that you really can effectively use the Revolver on are the A tiers and B2. Prisoner efficiency on B1, B3, and anything that is C tier and up, the Revolver is just not a very good option just because of how many big enemies there are or how many special threats there are. Next up we have the Machine Gun. The Machine Gun is also going to be getting a C tier, much for the same reasons as the Revolver. It's just, there's not many levels where you can effectively utilize this thing on, and there's not really many alarms in this rundown that you need the extra stagger for. Much like the SMG, there's only 2 levels with surge alarms out of the 13 in the rundown, so you don't really need this thing. For stats, the Machine Gun does 3.91 damage per shot, which is actually very similar to the pistol. They're both 3-shot kills. The only difference is the Machine Gun need to hit 2 headshots instead of 1 headshot in order to get the 3-shot kill. The Machine Gun also has a 3.5 second reload time, which is kind of on the slower side, and has a range of 15 meters. It also has a 0.45 second charge up time before you can start shooting it. Some notes about this thing is that it's actually very, very good when it comes to dealing with large waves of enemies such as surge alarms, and also holding choke points. It has actually a really, really good kill speed just because of how fast it fires and the fact that it doesn't take too many bullets to kill enemies. One of the main downsides to this thing is that it has an extremely low ammo pool, and for whatever reason the pistol not only deals more damage than it, but also has more ammo capacity while still being a primary weapon. Also, this thing has a fair amount of recoil, so it's going to cause you to miss a good amount of shots some of the time. And its slow charge up time actually makes this thing pretty bad when it comes to killing medium trickles of enemies, because you're only going to be shooting in small bursts, and then you're going to be charging again, and then shooting in small bursts, and then charging again, and it honestly feels like you're spending more time charging the damn thing than actually firing it. Outside of that, it has an okay hipfire. It has a 2.0 hipfire deviation, but again, this thing is getting a C tier. It's not necessarily bad. It by no means is bad, but there's just not many opportunities to use it this rundown. Again, you can't really use it on B1 or B3, and anything that is C tier or up, you shouldn't be using this thing on anyways, with the exception of like C3 sometimes. But yeah, there's just not many levels to utilize it on, and its low ammo capacity makes it kind of unattractive for later levels. So next up we have the Hel Gun. The Hel Gun's going to go into the B tier. And I know some people are confused by that. I'll explain why, but we'll go over stats first. For stats, it does 16.25 damage. It has a 3.7 second reload time and has a range of 15 meters. It also has a 0.1 second charge up time, and it can overpen up to 3 additional enemies past the first one you shot every time you fire it. So let's go over some notes. It can one-shot normal enemies even from outside of its effective range. It has more range, damage, and mag size, and it gets overpens, so it pretty much just makes it feel like it's just a flat-out better revolver in every single way, which is one of the reasons why Revolver's getting C tier. Its moderate recoil actually makes this thing kind of spammable. It's okay boss damage, and it's okay against big enemies. One of the major drawbacks to this thing is that it has the slowest reload speed out of any weapon in the game for this rundown, and that killing multiple enemies in one shot is actually relatively inconsistent. Just because if enemies aren't perfectly lined up, you're not going to hit the overpen headshots. And enemies also have 3 different positions that they can be running at you in. They can be hunched over, Naruto sprinting, or they can be crawling. And if you have any number of those in a line, you're not going to kill all 3 in one shot unless you're on some crazy elevation and they're lined up perfectly. Its hipfire is okay. It is a 1.7 hipfire, which is above average for the above average guns. The main reason why this is in B tier is because in almost every single scenario, it just feels like it is a worse Hel Rifle. Although it does have 4 additional bullets in its magazine and it fires faster, if you're using the Hel Rifle, you're going to be killing more things per shot, and you're not going to be spending as long shooting them, because you're not going to have to do a second follow-up shot to kill everything you didn't kill with the first headshot. Hel Rifle will kill all of that instantly, just in the first bullet, which makes it more ammo efficient. If you're killing 2 or more targets, it is also more time efficient. The only scenario that I would ever think the Hel Gun is better than the Hel Rifle is for shooting 1 and only 1 small enemy, and that's it. For everything else, the Hel Rifle deals more damage, can get more overpens per shot, has more range, has a faster reload speed, has a higher kill threat, can kill giants better, and deals better boss damage, and you can one-shot scouts to the head or the back instead of just the back of the head. Even though they're not designed to have the same purpose, the Hel Rifle just fulfills the purpose of the Hel Gun, but better, simply because you want to be going for overpens with both weapons anyways, and the Hel Rifle can do it much easier with much more consistency, while also still being able to overpen more than 3 enemies for even more ammo efficiency, and then the Hel Rifle can still do all the things that the Hel Rifle does. So that's mainly the reason why this is getting B tier. Again, it's not a bad weapon, it's just outshined by the Hel Rifle in such a spectacular manner. Next up, we have the Sniper Rifle. The Sniper Rifle is going to go into the A tier. So let's talk about its stats. The Sniper does 30.1 damage. It has a 3.5 second reload speed, and it has a range of 60 meters. Some notes about this thing is that while I have said the other weapons have essentially infinite range, the Sniper Rifle might as well. Its damage fall-off starts when enemies are no longer within your render distance. Good way to see this is on C1. You can shoot enemies from outside your render distance, and if you hit them in the head, they won't die, but they'll be left on 1 HP, pretty much tappable from any primary in the game as if you were using a DMR. So it's kind of fucking stupid. Speaking of one-shotting, the Sniper Rifle can one-shot all big enemies to the head except for big chargers, just because they don't have a headshot multiplier. It also can one-shot tumors on boss enemies, making it one of the fastest boss killers in the game. It can also kill multiple big guys in rapid succession faster than any other weapon in the game, which is another reason why it's getting put into the A tier. The only main downside to this thing is that it is very ammo inefficient if you are not shooting a big enemy with it, and if you miss a shot, it is also very, very ammo inefficient, and it doesn't really get many bullets back per ammo refill. All in all, it is very ammo efficient when it comes to killing big guys, and it does it very, very quickly. So even levels like C3 where there's a ton of hybrids, having a sniper is great, because if your sniper player can aim, the hybrids just disappear and no one ever has to deal with them. It is a very strong weapon, and it's going to the A tier. Honestly, it could go to S tier if the Hel Rifle wasn't in this rundown, and speaking of the Hel Rifle, let's talk about that thing, because the Hel Rifle is going into the S tier. It is, in my opinion, that you can take this thing on any level, and it is probably one of the best choices you can take. It really is. This thing is really stupid overpowered, and I cannot see this thing, much like the burst cannon, ever returning to any future rundown without being heavily nerfed. So let's go over its stats. The Hel Rifle deals 30.1 damage, which is the same as the sniper rifle. It just can't one-shot enemies to the head because it doesn't have a crazy high precision multiplier. It has a 3.2 second reload speed, which is faster than the Hel Gun for whatever fucking reason. And it has a range of 40 meters, so much like the DMR and the double tap, it is effectively infinite. It has a 0.12 second charge up time, which is only marginally slower than the Hel Gun, and one of the only downsides to it is that it has a 0.75 second cooldown time before you can try and charge and shoot again. It gets 5 overpens past the first target that you shoot on every shot. And let's go over some notes about this thing. Holding choke points with this weapon is extremely easy, as it can not only one-shot normal enemies, it can also one-shot chargers, and because it gets 5 overpens, it has crazy ammo and time efficiency if you're killing, even 2 or 3 things just with one shot. It is extremely easy to kill multiple targets in one shot as well, just because it has to clip them literally anywhere. A good example of this is on the second surge alarm of C1, or not surge, sorry, the second S1 alarm of C1. Enemies are slightly raised up on that bridge, and you can overpen crawlers by just shooting them in the face, and you can clip like the legs or the toes on the Naruto running enemies, and they will just die. It just has to clip anything anywhere, and it dies. Although the sniper rifle is still very ammo efficient when it comes to killing big enemies, if you are hitting 2 or more big enemies per shot, the Hel Rifle is the most efficient big guy killing weapon in the game in terms of ammo. If you're hitting 2 or more enemies per shot, then it is more efficient than the Hel Gun hitting 2 or more enemies per shot, because if you want the Hel Gun to be more efficient in this scenario, you would need the Hel Gun to actually kill the 2 or 3 things per shot, which it is not very consistent with doing just because enemies will stand in different postures. The Hel Rifle has okay hipfire. It has a 2.0 hipfire, which is above average for most weapons. One of the other main downsides is because of its cooldown. If you miss a shot in close range, you're most likely going to take damage from whatever you missed. But outside of that, normally the cooldown doesn't play into effect for the most part, because if you're killing 3 or 4 things per shot anyways, they're not going to get to you to begin with. It also has good boss damage. When it comes to killing the tank, it is just as ammo efficient as the sniper rifle is. It just takes longer. So yeah, overall, this thing is crazy overpowered. I think one of the best examples of how stupid overpowered this thing is if you ever sought off any scout on E1 this rundown. You just have a Hel Rifle go deal with it. Another reason why this thing just seems super overpowered is if you do the reactor on B1, it's just Hel Rifle City. Anything that moves towards you just dies. It's just straight line them up, death, nothing else. Its ability to one-shot pretty much everything in the game and be the most efficient when it comes to killing big enemies is what really puts this above everything else. So yeah, there it is. Here is the final list, the final tier list for all the weapons this rundown. I know this is a very long video. We're pushing an hour at this point. If you sat through all of it and you actually listened to all the explanations, I commend you. It's a lot of shit. A lot of it most people probably don't care about, but oh well. I hope this helped in some way when it comes to weapon selection. I know this is very late in the rundown. We're pushing rundown 6 here pretty soon, I think, but I just wanted to make this anyways, because tier lists are fun to make, and I like talking about numbers. It makes me just nerd out, so Outside of that, if you think I missed anything, leave a comment. If you want to discuss reasons why you think I placed the weapon wrong, go ahead, feel free. Go ahead in the comments or DM me on Discord. Either one works. Outside of that, that's all I've got. You guys have fun.